Hello everybody, welcome to UK Gaming Network. I'm Brian, also known as UKGN Zoidberg, and this is Best 10, where I offer up my favourite games to fit a selected theme. There aren't that many big publishers left as I continue this mini-series, shining a spotlight on my favourite Amiga games that each one produced. I was planning to do a Best 10 horror games for Halloween in this episode, but having covered the games of EA a few episodes ago, I thought I would do something equally horrific and talk about the other big evil mega corporation, Activision. Although in fairness, that's what they're known as today. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, things were very different. As well as bringing a number of arcade games to the Amiga, they would also produce some original and groundbreaking titles too. The question is though, which ones of these games are still worth playing in 2025? As always, this is purely my own opinion and not based on any review scores. These are simply the games that I would prefer to play the most that were published by Activision, including some of those that appeared on their Electric Dreams label. I'd love to know which ones are your favourites in the comments. Now though, let's get to the games, starting with my choice for number 10. Activision's internal development team, Software Studios, produced a number of titles, and in a lot of instances there was no discernible difference between the Atari ST and Amiga versions. Atomic robo-kid is one such example. There's a distinct lack of colour to the visuals, and the scrolling is quite jerky, but thankfully none of those things stop it from being an enjoyable shooter. On the A500 you had to try and play it with one hand free to be able to change weapons with the spacebar, but now you can have it all on the joypad, making the game much more enjoyable. Ultimately, like the arcade game it's based on, this is by no means a classic, but it is still good fun. It's very hard to describe Wicked, and it was actually a game that I didn't understand or like for many years. The easiest way to describe it is that it's a combination of single-screen arcade shooter, territorial strategy game and puzzler. Yes, it's every bit as peculiar as that sounds. This feels like it was heavily inspired by the games of Jeff Minter, although it lacks the psychedelic intensity and polish of those titles. It's a shame that it's a direct port from the 16-colour Atari ST version too, with only minor improvements to the sound, as I'm sure a proper Amiga version with 32 colours would have been so much better. Despite its flaws though, I still really enjoyed it. Long before I'd heard of a Tamagotchi or The Sims, there was Little Computer People. Not really a game in the traditional sense, as all you really do is watch a small virtual person go about his business, feeding his dog, playing the piano, or just watching TV. It's a strangely hypnotic experience though, and the first time I ever loaded it up, I was left wondering where 3 hours had gone. You can type in commands to ask him to do specific things, and even play cards against him, as long as you remember to be polite, that is. It's certainly a lot more enjoyable to watch than any so-called reality TV show. The R-Type series has consistently been good at feeling familiar but different with every sequel, and I honestly don't think there's a bad game amongst them. I think R-Type 2 is the weakest in the series though, and I can already see the comments that this video is going to get even as I write the script. I think what lets it down is some frustrating level design and some of the least memorable bosses in the series. This doesn't mean that I don't like it though, and Arc Development, to give them their dues, produced a top drawer conversion for the Amiga. There are a few minor instances of slowdown, but it's because nothing from the original has been left out, and it's not exactly game breaking. A very easy recommendation. I don't know why more people don't talk about Spin Dizzy. The first game was a game I played a huge amount on the Spectrum, and Spin Dizzy Worlds expanded on the original in meaningful ways. The biggest and most important change is that the screen now smoothly scrolls rather than flip screen, making the navigation of each area much easier and fairer. The puzzles are also more challenging without being frustrating, and the one thing that they thankfully didn't change is the control over the gyroscope itself, which remains as satisfying as it always was. I genuinely feel that this is a game that more people should play and be aware of, so that's why I'm including it in this countdown. I almost cried when I loaded up Dragon Breed in order to make this video, as I was greeted with a choice: music or sound effects. Why did developers continually do this to us? Both options have their appeal, but either way you lose something from the game as a whole. I had fond memories of playing this at the time of its release, and it is indeed a solid conversion of an excellent arcade game. Riding a dragon through the levels of a side-scrolling shooter instantly makes it feel different from everything else out there, or it would have done had Saint Dragon not come out around the same time. As far as I'm concerned though, this is the superior game of the two, with more interesting enemies and level design. Just a shame about the sound option. Normally, Amiga strategy games came with a manual the size of War and Peace that you needed to read in order to be able to play the game. Millennium 2.2 adopted a different approach, at least here in the UK, where the inbox player's guide was barely 4 pages long and told you nothing that you couldn't work out in a couple of minutes. This meant that I never really played it when it was new, and I only really tried playing it again recently. What I found it to be is a really enjoyable and thankfully not too complex strategy game, and one that I enjoy a lot more than its sequel, Deuteros, which I felt overcomplicated the gameplay. Try to play the US version if you can though, as minor improvements to the graphics and interface make it feel like an all-round better game. To some, this is the greatest arcade conversion on the Amiga, and R-Type definitely stands as an example of what the perfect combination of developer and game can produce. Factor 5, makers of Turrican, were given the gig after they made R-Type inspired Catechis, and produced an almost arcade perfect translation. Only hardcore fans will really know the difference, as all that's really missing is a bit of parallax scrolling and a few minor graphical effects. Even in their original arcade form, I prefer the first game over its sequel, and the gap between the Amiga versions is slightly greater, but they're both still great games that shoot 'em up fans should be playing. In 2025 we take open world games for granted, but when Hunter was released there was nothing else like it. Here was a game with a huge map, and the game actively encouraged you to explore it to see what you could find. Sure, there was a mission objective, but how you got there was entirely up to you. There are cars, bikes, boats and helicopters to find, all of which you can take the controls of, or you could just walk and swim there if you had an hour to kill. There are 3 different styles of game you can play, including one specifically for those who prefer more of an action game. Even if you haven't got the time required to play the full game, it's still a game that you can load up and have a good time with regardless. My only real complaint is how awkward it feels to control your character when they're on foot, but it's not enough to spoil how good the rest of the game is. As far as I'm concerned, Super Hang-On was the best arcade conversion released during the lifespan of the Amiga. It has all the playability and sense of speed of the Sega original, including the fantastic soundtrack, and it absolutely put other racing game conversions to shame at that time. Looking at you, Chase HQ and Outrun. Even to someone who plays as many arcade racing games as me, it's incredibly tough, with a single tap of an opponent capable of completely ruining a run. But that only adds to the just one more go appeal. By including the choice of joystick or mouse control, and the ability to adjust the sensitivity, it's a game that just about anyone should be able to pick up and enjoy. Frankly, they should have given all the racing games of that era to programmer ZZKJ to produce. Yes, he'd have probably been a little bit overworked, but just think how much better all of our lives would have been. So those are my choices for the best 10 games from Activision. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and subscribe, and maybe hit the hype button if you can, to let more people know about it. Channel VIP members get to watch many of our videos early, including this one, which costs just £1.99 a month, and if that's something that you're interested in, the link to the memberships are in the video description. All previous episodes in this series are available in a playlist on the channel, and the link to that should be on screen right about now. Thank you very much for watching this video, and until next time, happy retro gaming everybody. I'll see you soon.